Hey, now that you're onboarding more developers and more applications into your cloud native infrastructure or Kubernetes, I'll ask you three big questions. First question is, do you know what's actually running in your cluster? Sounds simple, right? But as you scale the number of developers, teams, pipelines, and services, it becomes hard to keep track of it. Second question directly related to that is, do you or your developers, SREs or platform engineering teams have enough information to support these applications? Remember, not everyone is a Kubernetes specialist. So how can you empower them with enough metadata information, application history, incident management, integration, and others that they can quickly identify and spot problems, troubleshoot their applications, and keep SLAs? And last but not least, do you know if these applications are secure? And I'm not only talking about container security scanning. That you can get done fairly easy. But security is way more than that for cloud native, right? So today, I'll show you in just a few minutes how you can answer those three questions and deliver value quickly without changing one single thing. Let's see. Those are big questions, right? But I'll show you how in just a few minutes you can address those topics and deliver value quickly across different teams without having to change a single thing in your pipeline, automation, or anything. So what I have here in front of me is my Shippa Cloud account. You can, as you know, sign up for one on apps.shippa.cloud. It's free. Just go there, right? Sign up, create an account, and do what I'm gonna show you here. So what I have in front of me is I have a Kubernetes cluster. It's running a GKE cluster. It can be AKS, EKS, GKE, whatever you have, and multiple clusters. The world is our oyster, my friend. And I have a GKE cluster as part of the example, and I have two applications. I have a Magento application and I have a WordPress application that has been deployed on my cluster, whatever way, right? I don't care how it ended up here, but I have these apps running. I need to support it and I need to know if it's secure. Good. If we go back to Shippa Cloud, it's basically a new cluster or a new account, and I don't have any application deployed. What I'm gonna do first is, let's go step by step. I'm gonna discover these applications so we can implement a support model for our applications. If we come on frameworks and we click on create, the second option is called Discover Existing Applications. We're gonna use this one. Click on Next, and it's gonna ask you first for the name. So let's say it's gonna be Magento Project 1, for example, right? Let's start with our Magento app. It's gonna ask you for a plan, and if you just created your account on Shippa, you have one called Shippa Plan by default. I created a couple other ones here, and you can select it. The plan is a resource limit. So what you were saying here is applications deployed for Magento should not consume more than the limits that I created for my prod plan or my dev plan or whatever. You can create your plans directly here. The third part is Kubernetes namespace. Shippa will always automatically create a namespace for every framework, but because we want Shippa to discover applications in an existing namespace, we gotta make sure that the namespace here matches the namespace we have in our cluster. In our case, if we look back, we have one called Magento, right? So let's adjust it. We just say Magento. I already have a cluster connected on Shippa. If you don't, it's easy to connect your GKE AKS on-premises cluster. Literally, if I can do it, you can do it. But I'll just say, hey, Shippa, connect this framework, this policy framework to this cluster and this namespace in that cluster, right? We do next. And what Shippa is going to ask you for is a label, because Shippa will connect to that cluster, the Magento namespace, and Shippa needs a label that it can use to discover the applications. If we go back to our kubectl and I describe one of my pods, right at the beginning of the output, I have a section called labels, and I'll maybe pick this one here called app Kubernetes IO, Magento, or I can pick any other that I want, right? I'll pick this one because I believe this one is common across the different pods I have. Okay. If I go back to Shipa and I'll just put it here and I'll say, hey Shipa, for this app, every application that you discover with this label, just add a suffix of Magento demo, right? What's gonna happen now is Shipa will start the process of connecting this policy framework to your cluster, right? And to that namespace. Let's see. The process should only take a few seconds. And if we click now on our applications, for example, we can see our Magento application here, right? Or the pods related to Magento. And now comes the support part. How can this help you support your applications? If we pick one of them, the first part that we are gonna see here is all the metadata that you need to support your applications. If we come here, we can see container images or the image that is being used on this application. You can see all the environment variables, for example, that are needed to run this app. You can see config maps or endpoints where this application is being exposed, for example. And as you move towards the right, Shipa will start recording traffic for that application and performance. So every developer or DevOps or SRE, for example, can understand how this application is performing. You have lifetime. So another problem that you have with Kubernetes is what happened with my application over time. You don't want to be going back to Git all the time and try to find the repo for a specific app. You want to have a centralized information. Here, what happens is every time you connect an application or Shipa to a namespace and Shipa discovers that application, it creates an event for app create. And then it starts recording history for your applications. When it went down, when it went up, new deployments that happened, everything, and the log associated with that activity. So now you can have clear visibility over what happened to that application over time that may have led to an outage. Another part that you have as well is integrations. Using integrations, you can quickly integrate that application into your incident management stack. Be it Slack, Teams, Jira, or whatever you're using. You can just say, hey, every time there's a deployment, there is an error, send me a message on Slack, or every time there's a new user added, send me a Slack, whatever happens to your application, right? Just send me a Slack message or a Teams or create a ticket on Jira when something fails. Now you have visibility over the application metadata you need. You have lifecycle, what led your application to the state where it currently is over time. You have the integration into your incident management tools. And another point as well is here's your application architecture, right? You can see what's the image that your application is using, what are the pods and the details of that pod. So if there is something wrong, this is gonna turn red, and red is never great. And you can quickly identify where the problem is and the log associated with that problem, without having to kind of kubectl into your cluster and kind of try to find where the problem is. So now DevOps, SRE, and developers have information they need to quickly support their app. Also, another part is you can see how other services are communicating with this application. In this case, it's a lot, and that means that my application has no network policy. So anything can ask egress and egress data to and from this application. If it's production, it's not great. Now, let's address the other part of the question. Now you know how to support your application. You can integrate into incident management. You know all the metadata your application needs to run, what happened to your application over time. So now the question is, are your applications secure, right? Well, directly from here, you quickly know that there are no network policies over your application, so everything can send data and retrieve data from your applications. Not great. But beyond that, a lot of people treat security as security scanning, and it goes beyond that for production, right? And that's why we rolled out something called Insights. If you go into Insights, you have here 2 violations that we found with 2 of the containers. If you click on here, you can see the resource limit violation first. You can see that there is no definition of resource limits for your Magento app. This is not great. So you can quickly highlight and go back into the Helm chart template or whatever Git repo is pushing this thing into your cluster, because you know this can consume your cluster. Great. But what if we start tightening up the security? If we go into our Magento project namespace, for example, and we update this, and we say, hey, applications for Magento, because it's a production app, for example, should have at least a minimum of 5 replicas and a maximum of 10 replicas. Just saying it, right? And they should scale up every time it hits 85% of CPU usage. Let's update it. So what I did is I just updated a little bit our Magento Project 1 framework policy that we created and connected to the cluster to discover my Magento app. If we come in here, we can see, oops, now there's more violations, right? Or there are more violations that we can see. Not only my Magento app is using more memory than it's supposed to use, but it also has less replicas than it's supposed to have. So if it's a production app, you can quickly identify that you need to scale up that application. Let's tighten it up a little bit more. If we go back into our Magento framework, you can update this and you can, let's say, registry control. Because this is a production app, you can say, hey, every application for my Magento namespace should only come from Docker.io Shippo software or whatever you're running. If we update and close this, Shippo will start scanning these applications again, and in a few seconds, it will start showing you new vulnerability. So now it's actually your applications, or these applications are actually pulling images that should not be allowed in your cluster. So now you're starting to put that workflow or that security workflow in place where you can go all the way to, our applications exposed where they should not be exposed? Are they exposed on ports where they should not be? Are they pulling images from where they should not pull images? Are they deployed on nodes where they should not be deployed? Now, what you did is in just a few minutes, you gave your developers and your teams an easy way to understand their application, support, history, metadata, integration into your incident management, and now you can quickly scan your applications to make sure that they comply with your policies across a whole spectrum of policies. Not only security scanning, but way beyond that in a few minutes without changing anything. I hope that was helpful. I'd love to get your thoughts and see you using that. Again, you can try it on apps.shippo.cloud. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks.